welcome back to my channel. So this is not the video I was anticipating making today. I am in the process of remaking my Freerin wig for GalaxyCon St. Louis, and I had a bit of a mishap with a hot glue gun and it was a fun chain reaction of getting hot glue on one finger and it winding up on technically 3 fingers and the thumb, and also my foot. So I took a break from that wig and it is not finished in time for me to record and post a video. So I thought, in light of the situation, that we could talk about safety. I laugh because I feel really ridiculous for what I did yesterday. Like, my hand is pretty badly burned. I know you're not technically, I don't think you're technically supposed to bandage burns, or maybe that's an old wives' tale that I grew up with, but there is some burn gel on my hands. It has lidocaine in it to kill the pain, and the stuff is amazing, but it really hurts when you first put it on, and I bandaged them so that I don't get that everywhere. But I feel really silly about this because I definitely preach about safety a lot on YouTube, in my workshops, particularly with my Warbler workshop, where we work with very hot things, a heat gun. The Warbler gets incredibly hot, and I'm always harping on people to make sure that they are incredibly safe. And here I am with some silly burns that is stopping me from continuing to craft at the moment. I definitely made mistakes. I'm working in a small corner of my room because my Sakizo skirt takes up too much space, and the cords have difficulty reaching from the plug in the wall to my table. Granted, that's not how I burnt myself, but because I have a wireless hot glue gun, so it should be mostly fine. So that's not really how I burnt myself, but I definitely was feeling cramped. And then I would take my hot glue gun and I'd set it on the side. So like, I was already moving too quickly in the space that I was in, the small space that I was in, but I actually accidentally touched the fresh hot glue that I put on the wig directly when I was laying a weft down. I actually touched it with this finger, and my immediate reaction, because it hurt, was to flick my hand and try to wipe it off with my thumb, which burnt my thumb. Coincidentally, this finger touched the glue and also got burned, and so did this finger. This finger got burned on top because when I pulled away, my finger like touched some of the glue somewhere. And then in all the chaos of me going, ow, I set my hot glue gun down on the table near me, which was a little too far away, and it fell off, and the hot tip landed directly on my foot. So, because I'm wearing flip-flops, which I really shouldn't be doing when I am using heat tools. You should be wearing protection, such as like tennis shoes. Tennis shoes will help. Fun chain reaction of events. I have also concluded that I really hate the hot glue rope. So for my Surebonder, I purchased a rope of hot glue. It's like 3 feet long because I will go through those hot glue sticks so fast, and I thought it would be a really great idea to have this rope. You just stick it in and it's a long continuous thing. However, that keeps getting tangled on stuff when I go to pick it up because it's so long, and I do think that's why it fell off the table, because I put it on the table, probably not fully, but the weight of the hot glue rope, I think, pulled it off the table. So that's not a great thing to have for safety reasons. That's my fun adventure yesterday. So let's talk about how we can safely perform our craft. So with hot glue, especially with a high temp hot glue gun, you want to make sure you work in an area that is easily maneuvered in, so that you can keep your gun away from you if it happens to fall off a table. We should be wearing heat resistant gloves. It's very difficult for me to do. I can wear them with Warbler, but when I'm doing stuff with wigs, if I get glue on the glove, then it causes a huge mess. And I work a lot with feel. I use my fingertips to feel where things are, and I can tell like the tackiness, all these things. So like, it's very hard for me to give this one up, but I do think that I need to because of what happens. So heat resistant gloves. Cosplay Supplies used to sell my favorite. They no longer carry those from what I understand. So I'm not quite sure where to get the particular type of heat resistant glove that I really enjoy. Amazon might have some, I'm sure Lowe's does, but heat resistant gloves when utilizing hot glue, using a heat gun, working with Warbler, heating up your foam, you should always use heat resistant gloves. One of the things I used to do when I worked with hot glue, and I should probably do this again if I wind up not wearing gloves, I used to keep a little bowl of water near me so that every time I needed to go near the hot glue on something, so like while working with a wig, I would dip my hand in the water and then I could manually manipulate the hot glue for a few seconds. I don't recommend doing that. Use tools to touch hot glue, but that's what I would do, and it wouldn't burn me. It protected my hand, the water did. I could only handle it for a couple of seconds before I'd have to dip my hand back in because that hot glue is very hot. But I need to keep a bowl of water near me for accidental burns, not to continue to manipulate the glue with my bare hands, because that's not good. We should be using tools to manipulate hot glue. I really like using a rat tail comb, one with a metal end, to press the wefts into the hot glue, and I had it with me, and for some reason I just didn't use it in that moment. So let's make sure we have some heat resistant gloves in our inventory. Also, this one may come as a bit of a shock to some people who sew, because I feel like a lot of people just don't think about it, but fray check is actually toxic. It puts off toxic fumes. There's a ton of warnings on the label that explains that you should not breathe this in, and to make sure to use it in a well-ventilated area. So when applying fray check, we should be wearing a respirator. I really like it used to be $20 at Lowe's. I think it's like $25 now. I really like this respirator from Lowe's. It lasts for, I think, about 6 months, depending on how often you're using it, and you can get the cartridges, which are the pink things, at Lowe's as well to replace. I recently heard from a cosplayer, I can't remember who, that they would switch out their cartridges between builds, which is really smart. For me though, that doesn't work so well, because like Sakizo is taking a year and I need to change out my cartridges before that. So I usually do about the 6-month mark. Unless I did a lot of sanding on my 3D prints or something like that, then I'll switch it out around the 3-month mark. But a respirator, we must always protect our lungs. When I was at DragonCon, I went to a panel that talked about, oh gosh, I don't even remember the topic anymore, but it involved like gluing and finishing your cosplays. His number one rule is if you can smell it, it's killing you. And I think that's a really good rule to have. If you can smell the glue, if you can smell the thing that you're sanding, it's probably killing you, because most of the stuff we do in cosplay is incredibly toxic. So you want to make sure you work in a well-ventilated area, and make sure that you wear a respirator when you're working with anything that has fumes. Also, 3D printers. I have a 3D printer. It is not covered, and I do keep it inside. Technically speaking, it would be safer to put outside, but I live in a high humidity area, and it is impossible to keep the filament dry from the time it leaves the roll to the extruder in this environment. So that does not work for me. However, there is a window right behind it that I do open up, and I turn on the fan, and I do zero work in that room while it is running, and then I air out the room when I am finished printing. So just one of those things that 3D print filament, even though it may not say so, is actually really bad to breathe in. It is heating up these plastic particles, and you just don't want that in your lungs. So make sure to use a well-ventilated area and a respirator when working around 3D prints. And that comes for sanding 3D prints, or sanding foam, or even if you're using a soldering iron to cut out lace or anything like that, you're burning fabric. Everything like that, everything that involves heat puts off fumes, and it's really dangerous to breathe those in. And I see so many videos online of people using a soldering iron to melt through fabric to cut things out like parts of lace, and they're not wearing a respirator. You absolutely need to wear a respirator when doing that, and you need to, if possible, do it outside or in a very well ventilated area, because there are fumes everywhere. You also want to wear a respirator if you're doing gold leafing, because the particles do wind up in the air, and you do not want to breathe that into your lungs. So a respirator is probably your number one tool for safety, because even in sewing, we use things that put off fumes, and you just want to be very safe. You have one set of lungs, let's not destroy them. Don't have one near me right now, but I wear eye protection when I sew on my sewing machine most of the time. And if my embroidery machine is running, even if I'm across the room, I'm wearing eye protection. I once was stitching through about an inch worth of fabric. I know it's a lot. It was in my earlier days of sewing, but I was making my Doctor Strange cloak and a needle exploded on the machine from the strain of stitching through this thick fabric, and a piece of the needle actually skimmed right under my eye and hit my cheek. And that I had never been told that could happen. I didn't ever think about having to wear eye protection with a sewing machine. Like, who would? We should be wearing eye protection with a sewing machine. When your needle breaks, you just do not know where a shard of that is going through. Now, there's definitely times where it's like, yeah, it'll probably be fine. Like, you're just sewing some simple fabrics together. But when you're doing anything through thick fabric or glue or anything that could cause strain on your needle or an embroidery machine, I highly recommend wearing eye protection. Again, you only have one set of them. Let's not accidentally destroy them. Also, if you ever have to get an MRI and you've had an injury with metal shards, that causes a lot of complications, I found out. Let's protect our eyes. Oh, and you also want to wear eye protection when you're doing anything with particles. So if you're sanding 3D prints or you're sanding foam or you are using gold leaf, it is best to wear eye protection to make sure none of those particles get in your eyes. And I will mention it again, wear shoes. Real shoes when you're dealing with anything hot, just in case you drop something. You do not want to burn your feet. Wearing shoes in a sewing room is great because you don't know, or at least I don't know, if I happen to have dropped a needle or a pin somewhere in the room. I highly recommend not wearing something that has kind of a foam sole. You want to wear something sturdy because, fun story, I have another injury I had recently where I stepped on a needle that was upright in the carpet and went right through my shoe, my flip-flop, which had a foam bottom, and into my toe, and it went all the way through the toe. It was one of the little toes. It went all the way through the toe and hit the nail from underneath. That sucked. That was really painful. So wearing real shoes with a good sturdy bottom, I highly recommend at this point so that you don't wind up like me. Also, I highly recommend getting a sewing stiletto. So this is what they look like. Got mine off Amazon. It had like a nice wooden handle and has like a metal spike on the end. My husband did sort of spoil this for me. I was very excited to finally buy a sewing stiletto because I felt like I finally needed one. And my husband was like, why can't you just use a skewer? So I guess you could just use a skewer or maybe an ice pick, or you could just go to the store and find something. But I really like the sewing stiletto because you have this metal tip on one side and then you have a flat tip on the other. This helps when you need to get your fingers really close to the needle on your sewing machine, but you don't want to sew through your hand. So you can use either tip, depending on what you need, to press your fabric down and take it really close to that needle so that you can keep your fingers far away from the sewing needle. I am pretty convinced eventually I am going to sew through a finger, and thank the Lord I have not yet, but I do feel like it's probably going to happen at some point in time, which is why I decided to invest in the stiletto. I just need to get into the habit of using it. It is a really great tool for safety, and it also works better than your fingers to hold things down like pleats because you can get closer to the needle than you can with your fingers. Oh, and I don't think that I mentioned it with respirator. Wear respirator when spray painting, wear it when airbrushing, wear it when spray gluing, any aerosolized things like that, wear your respirator. Also, this one drives me nuts, and I am going to emphasize this a lot. If you are working with resin, I don't care what the resin says, because there's some resins out there that say that they are non-toxic. But if you read the instructions, it clearly says that they are toxic until they're cured. So even if you can't smell it, because there are some resins that no longer have a scent, if you are working with resin, you need to go to a well-ventilated area, you need to wear gloves, and you need to wear a respirator. Resin is so toxic. It will destroy you, or I should say it can destroy you. Don't take the risk with resin. And if you're going to manipulate it when it's partially cured, wear gloves. There's so many people online that show these very cool videos of them pulling a design out of the mold when it's still soft and then like pressing it into a bowl to take on the shape of a bowl, or manipulating the resin in a different way to customize the shape or whatever. And it's a really cool idea and a really cool technique, but they do it without gloves. That is so dangerous. Uncured resin is like uncured gel nail polish. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to what's been going on online lately with people reporting how they've had really serious allergic reactions to gel polish that got on their skin. That is essentially resin. You can have the same reaction to resin that you do with gel nail polish. This type of allergic reaction, once you have it once, you have it for the rest of your life, meaning you can no longer handle resin at all, especially if you're going to breathe it in. You can't get your nails done with gel nail polish. There's a lot of medical instruments that you can wind up having an allergic reaction to if you have this kind of allergy. And it is an allergy that anyone can get from handling resin or in properly handling gel nail polish. So please wear gloves and a respirator when handling resin. It is so incredibly dangerous. It's such a great tool to have, but it's not worth the risk to your health and safety. So I think that is my rant. I don't know why I'm lecturing you all, because it was definitely me that broke the rules and then got injured for it. So I'm happy to put some advice out into the world to hopefully prevent other people from having complications or injuries from doing the thing that we love so much, which is cosplay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hop off and maybe attempt to complete that wig. I don't know. I don't feel like it anymore. Or maybe just finish out the front panel on my sake. So we will see. So with that, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe for more content from me. And do you have any sort of safety tips that you could share? Make sure to put those down in the comments below. And I will see you in my next video.